before it became cool to become a billionaire overnight, it used to be a lot of hard work, and the first woman who essentially, very long time ago, took charge and broke the glass ceiling when it came to entrepreneurship in business. She's the former chairperson of Thermax and somebody who's helped numerous non-profit organizations. You would have heard of Teach for India, you would have heard of Akanksha, and very, very many more. As I mentioned this earlier, and I think it was to this batch or the batch before this, today we're used to the day and age of Shark Tank India, where there are more sharks and there are few whales. There's a massive difference between sharks in tanks and whales in oceans. It gives me great pleasure and privilege in order to be able to welcome a former National Advisory Council member and an advisor to multiple prime ministers, a former Rajya Sabha member, Padma Shri Anu Aga. At the outset, I must ask you something which I am deeply passionate about, but I do personally feel that at times it's a quality that is taught in schools through the form of cash programs in IB schools, and now in ICSE, CBSE also we've got social service that is mandated. But empathy and altruism is something that is a lifelong skill that one must have. To imbibe empathy and to practice it, and practice it over a period of time, is one thing. And you've done that. You've been a stellar example of the living embodiment of the word empathy, if I may. How important is it for young people to embody this, not in the form of curriculum? And I'm sorry, I'm just going a little off script because I had that talk with you inside, and I was met you in person again, like I said, after a long time. So your smile, your work, everything about you is so empathetic. And to that end, somewhere down the line, from the time we start in school, we're slightly more empathetic, but as we catch up with the rest of the world, that value somehow dilutes. I've seen this in people who were once from the organization and now outside. And how does one imbibe it whilst one is in school? And how does one continue to have it and practice it day to day?
I don't think anybody has a monopoly of empathy and anybody is without it completely. It's not just two sides. I'll give you an example. Any of you were in St. Xavier's College? No, nobody. Okay. St. Xavier's?
No.
St. Xavier's had a very active social service league. And we used to go to NGOs and read to the blind, look after the old, about 3 times a week. Then attend 2 camps, one a rural, one an urban, for 15 days. We didn't get better marks for this, or we were not given any reward for it. But we loved doing it. It was fun. And it stayed with us throughout our lives because we were exposed to the world of the people in India which we don't normally come across. Or handicaps which we are not aware, what it is to be blind, to be deaf, to be old and not cared for. So once you immerse yourself in these activities, then you don't need any kind of incentive to do it. If it is an incentive, then as soon as you finish your school or college, you may stop doing it because it was done to get those marks or to get that applause. But if you internalize it as something you enjoy doing, I think it will stay with you forever.
Internalizing these qualities, ma'am, is something that you spoke about. It's sometimes easier, you've of course lived it, but it's sometimes easier said than done. And I'll again just request you to elucidate. Sometimes we're caught in the quandary and the quagmire of so many things. Sometimes we're caught in the quandary of so many things. There are so many things that are around us which necessarily pull us towards things that don't allow us to show empathy. Like, say, for example, a lot of people who once were in the organization tell me, saying that, Rishabh, it's easy to state that you should do A, B, C things morally and altruistically, but the real life outside is a far cry away from your academic discussions which you have with school children. When we were in school and college, it was all well and good, but now, of course, it is very different. What would you say to those who, and they are going to be leaders of tomorrow as well, the ones who are sitting and the ones who are standing? What would you say to them when they face a lot of complication outside in terms of choosing what is morally correct, what is empathetic, and what is something that is correct according to the world and should be done according to the world? When you have a choice between the two, how do you make that choice?
I can't be prescriptive. Each one has to choose what they want to do. And I don't think it's morally wrong. If it's morally wrong, then I think we shouldn't be doing it at all. But not doing social work, I wouldn't call it morally wrong. I would call it being insensitive to your surroundings. But if you cheat, even for example in your school or later in corporate life you take shortcuts, that's definitely wrong and you don't do it. So not doing things like reaching out to the poor or the handicapped, to me, is being insensitive.
Ma'am, today we live in a day and age where there are very different definitions of feminism. And in order to protect interests of women, many believe, there's a school of thought that says that there should be reservations, that there should be reservations for women. But ma'am, you have been unequivocally unambiguous and stated that you would rather see women come up due to personal interest rather than, and on merit rather than reservation. Could you elaborate on this? And what is your definition of feminism?
Yeah, let me give you my definition of feminism. My definition of feminism is not about burning bras or shouting anti-male slogans as they've done in the West. Feminism is all about genders having equal rights, opportunities and treatment, men and women. It means challenging and dismantling the existing system of inequality and discrimination based on gender. It involves all individuals being treated with respect and dignity. But what is the reality in India? In our society, a woman faces several obstacles right from the time she is born. In fact, a girl child is denied the right to be born in this world by practicing female feticide. And what is sad, it's not the poor or the uneducated who practice it, but it is practiced by the well-to-do and educated. So, if a girl is not even given the right to survive and she is bombarded with messages by her family and society which is very different to those messages given to a male child. When I was a little girl, most of my messages related to cultivating my affiliative needs. Do you know what affiliative needs are? How do I get along with people? How am I going to be submissive, obedient, dutiful? I was also being prepared for marriage, for being a mother and running a home. My two older brothers were constantly reminded that they will have to join the family business and were given messages to achieve their achievement needs. Some people believe that these are inherent biological differences between boys and girls. Girls are more submissive, girls are meant to stay obedient. I don't accept that. I think women are victims of social conditioning. The world-famous anthropologist Margaret Mead studied many cultures and found out that men and women are more alike than different. It is nurture and not nature that makes all the differences. Differences become institutionalized through messages and belief systems embedded in the psyche over generations. Against this background, do women need special treatment such as reservation? Because they're bombarded with messages which does not prepare them for an active career and corporate life. The purpose of reservation is to undo past injustice, whether it is gender or caste-based, where the end goal is to create a level playing ground. If our society is serious about investing in groups that have suffered discrimination, I am all for reservation, but for a stipulated period of time, by which a level playing field is achieved. And while we introduce reservation, it is important that we put in measure whether social or within our education system to ensure that women are given an opportunity to do well. If we don't invest, then reservation will need to be in place forever, as we have seen. I'm talking about equality of cerebral opportunities and equal access to rights and opportunities. The best way to invest in a girl child is through education opportunities, and we do not discriminate against the messages we give to a girl child. I don't think we need, if we do that, we don't need a reservation. This is exactly what we need to invest in. But unfortunately, there is a big if, which creates hurdles in becoming career women. There are also many hurdles and prejudices in the corporate world against employing women in the workplace. For example, one untested belief is a woman does not take her work seriously, and as soon as she gets married and has a child, she quits, and hence there is no need to employ her and invest in her. Corporates forget that many men, especially these days, leave their jobs for better opportunities very, very often. So, if it means investing and catching up on all the years of discrimination, for a short while women may need, but not forever.
And that is most progressive thought indeed. And that is most progressive thought indeed, that you don't need reservation beyond a period of time in order to justify anything, because by then you should be good enough and on pure merit be able to secure the job or the education that you so desire. So I really appreciate that you mentioned this, given the context that there's always a growing cry for reservation on the basis of caste, creed, community, gender, so on and so forth. And like you said, marginalized communities should definitely have the benefit of that, and they should get those opportunities because they've been bereft of those opportunities forever. But once you've been given that reservation for that period of time, I think you've beautifully articulated that point. Yes, please.
In America, they have something called Operation Head Start,
right,
which is not a reservation, where handicapped children from deprived families are given better education, better opportunities to catch up. So, but there is no need for reservation if we do that in India. We don't do that, and then reservation becomes a political thing which you dare not touch it ever.
No, and which is why I asked the question to a person who's not a politician and is above politics. But one other thing that should be the focal area for politicians, and I know is something that you're deeply passionate about, is education. Ma'am, one of the things that I've strongly advocated always is, since our first report on education came out, and the first commission in 68, then in 86 there was a new policy, and then there was a policy after that in 2020. Each policy, ma'am, stated that there should be 6% of the GDP that should be allocated to education. No government, ma'am, as you would know very well, has allocated more than 50% and utilized that money as well. Right from the time that the first policy was made till the very end. Complete neglect when it comes to education. Our textbooks are archaic. The syllabus that we study in schools don't necessarily make us future ready. I do understand that geometry and trigonometry are important, but at the same point in time, future ready skills are not something that are imparted to the leaders of tomorrow.
Yeah.
Ma'am, to that end, what are the 21st century skills that students should focus on?
Yeah, okay. I 100% agree with you that all governments have neglected education, and the amount we keep in our GDP is dismal. Surveys have shown, which is the best country for education? Anyone? Huh? England? Sorry, what?
Somebody said Finland. Somebody said Finland out here.
Huh?
Somebody said Finland.
That's true.
Yes.
Surveys have shown that Finland has the best education system. It's not because they have fancy buildings or technologically they have very good equipment. Teaching is an aspiration profession. And in Finland, the most talented and best people apply to be teachers. Not like in India, doctors or engineers, but teachers. They are paid extremely well. Finland believes in investing in their students so that they are ready for the changing world. In India, let's look at Teach for India. Anyone has heard about it? No? Acha. Okay, I'll tell you. Which recruits the best talent, called fellows. We take 7% of the applicants. That means it's very difficult entrance. And these who are selected, these fellows, teach for 2 years. They go through a very rigorous training for 5 weeks, residential training. And they have to make a difference in the lives of the children. TFI classrooms, no child is physically or verbally abused or made to feel small and unimportant. There is no fear in the classrooms. Students enjoy coming to school, and only in that atmosphere can children learn. TFI pays a very small stipend, nothing like what Finland pays, or with the new policy the government teachers are paid. But in the short run, we may not be able to emulate Finland. Hopefully one day will. But can we learn some things from the TFI classrooms? In fact, I wish one day, Rishabh, you would call Shaheen to talk to the youth, and many of them join TFI and make a difference to our teaching. What is the purpose of education? Education is the means of preparing students for a future which is constantly changing. It's not a static future, and bringing out the best in each child. Technology is changing so fast that the result that what we learned yesterday may not be relevant today. For example, AI will make many low and IT jobs very soon redundant. Can students be prepared not to get only jobs, but to have skills to be entrepreneurs? How do we make our syllabus contextual? For example, when I learned history, I had to learn up the dates, which war took place when, which was very boring and not at all. Should history be taught from the lens of chronological events, or should it be meaningful? And children should be taught what were the mistakes that were made in the past, from which we have learned, and we will not do it again. I think generic skills which a teacher should cultivate in each child, such as curiosity, compassion, critical thinking, courage, collaboration, creativity. That's what real teaching is. The first responsibility of a teacher is to treat everyone with love and respect, and to embrace our diversity, and to hold on to our constitutional values. This may seem utopic, but with today's world, with myriad ways to generate hate and fear of intolerance, and with technology and social media and nuclear power, if we do not teach compassion and create genuine love, we will destroy ourselves. So all the technology will be used to hate each other or destroy each other. Without internalizing these human skills, the future generation could misuse rapidly changing technology, not for human betterment, but for destroying one another.
And you touched upon a very important aspect, that technology can be utilized both as a bane and a boon. And we spoke, 2 speakers ago, we spoke about how technology sometimes can be misused. And therefore, ma'am, one of the things that should be taught in school and is not taught in school is also leadership. And I'm particularly keen that that is a subject that is disseminated and taught in schools in terms of information, because you can be taught how to be a leader, and that's something that they only pick up then when you go to an MBA school. But what would be your advice, given the fact that you've been at the helm of so many organizations, when it comes to leadership lessons? I see one leadership lesson that I've learned today, which is much better than the speakers that have come thus far, and I must say all the speakers that have come thus far, is that ma'am, despite the wealth of her experience, and despite being able to, give examples from all across history, has prepared notes and come and is, referring to those notes and then giving the answers. I don't see many speakers doing that. I don't see many people actually bothering to prepare. So thank you, ma'am, for doing this today.
I've also prepared because I'm 82 and forget very often. So instead of groping for words, and I feel more confident and secure when I have something in front of me.
No, that's your humility speaking. That's your humility speaking. But ma'am, just coming back to in terms of the question, the only date in history that I remember is my birthday, which is the 3rd of September. And 1939 was the start of the Second World War. That's the only thing that I remember in history. Now, what you spoke about, that school education does not focus on skills that they should. Leadership is perhaps one of them.
Yeah.
What would be the one leadership lesson that you picked up and you wish that you knew at the beginning?
Let me tell you a little bit about my background so that you understand that I didn't become the head of Thermax because I deserved to be there, or I was very good in technology or in finance. We own 82% of the shares in Thermax, and when my husband died, the board decided that I should take over. By training, I'm a social worker, but destiny took me to the corporate world. As I said, after the sudden demise of my husband in 1996, the board appointed me as the executive chairperson of Thermax. In fact, I felt most inadequate to assume this responsibility because I kept telling myself, I'm not from the engineering background, I'm terrible at finance, I count like this. So, how can I run an engineering company? Today, I have realized a leader does not need to be an expert in any particular subject, but needs to bring wisdom to the organization. I have realized skills can be hired, but wisdom has to come from a leader. With wisdom, you can be honest and open when you don't know something and ask for help. With wisdom, you don't get perturbed by ups and downs of life and deal with both with equanimity. A leader has to know how to lead her own life successfully without earning the right to lead others. So that's what I think.
Thank you for stating that a leader must earn the right to lead and to tell other people that ABC needs to be done. Sometimes one feels that as soon as one is appointed, at least in my case, as soon as one is appointed school captain, then we've automatically assumed the responsibility and we can start giving instructions. But it is equally important in order to understand that one needs to earn the trust of the rest of the team, and one needs to be a pace-setting leader and need to do the things themselves as well.
And very important to say, I don't know. You know, as soon as you become a head of something, you're supposed to be Miss Know-all. And then what do you do to your team? If you're Miss Know-all, well, where are they? So you're not being honest with yourself. You don't, nobody, except God perhaps, has all the answers. So please feel all right to say, I don't know, and ask for it.
Thank you again. And you had the good fortune of seeing 3 speakers. In the last few days, I've seen quite a few of them and them talking about a host of issues. The magnanimity and the largesse that is required in order to be a good leader is one that you speak about. And I don't think anybody else spoke about it. And I'll be very honest that when we talk about role models, I'm glad that we are ending the series with you as the speaker. But let me come to something that is equally important, and I stress upon it every time I talk to young people, is adversity. And is the fact that when you fail, you seem to learn more than when you succeed, like I mentioned earlier as well. Was there any particular adversity that you remember that you'd like to narrate to young children in terms of your time at Thermax or even otherwise? And what could they possibly learn from it?
Okay. Let me again give you from my example, talk from my example. Soon after, when I took over as executive chairperson of Thermax, the Indian economy went through the downturn. And our publicly quoted shares, which were 420, became 36, which is a huge drop. I felt responsible to do something to turn around the company, and also I realized that we were out of depth. We wouldn't be able to do it ourselves. Some of my male executives kept saying, let's not ask for help, we'll be able to do it on our own. I'm going to be a little biased and say, I think men find it difficult to ask for help. It comes in the way of the macho in me. We appointed a consulting company to help us turn around. This taught us that never feel ashamed to acknowledge that I do not have answers to all the problems. And it is not a weakness, but a strength to ask for help. I'm repeating this because I feel most leaders think they have to know all the answers. That's a huge burden on their shoulders. The consulting company suggested many radical changes, such as closing down businesses which were adding to our top line but eroding our bottom line. This meant asking many people to leave. During my husband's time, we had never asked people to leave for performance because we felt India doesn't have a safety net and we can afford to take a few people along, except on integrity grounds. Now asking large numbers to leave was one of the most difficult and painful things to do. What helped was open and honest communication regularly with the employees. In those days, I used to explain my dilemma that if someone said, would you cut off your right hand? I would say, of course not. Who would cut off their right hand? But if gangrene sets in your body, and the whole body would die if you don't cut Would you cut it? Yes, I would say. So now we have to let go some people, which earlier I would never have agreed to, because whole of Thermax could close down. With a lot of help from everyone, Thermax did turn around. My advice to the youngsters is to accept and internalize that loss, failure, rejection are part of our lives, and we have to learn to deal with them with equanimity. I cannot be prescriptive and tell the audience how to deal with failure, but I can only share that having attended a Buddhist meditation program called Vipassana and daily meditating has helped me to deal with the vicissitudes of fortune and be less reactive. Anyone has heard of Vipassana? No? One person? Okay. At a young age, each of us need to find some way to tap our inner strength. You know, there is an ordinary and an extraordinary side in each of us. But most of us define ourselves as ordinary because then you don't have to push yourself, give out your best, and you can say, I'm so ordinary, what can you expect from me? And get away. Gandhiji is the best example. He was an ordinary person in South Africa, but after the train incident, he got in touch with his extraordinariness, and then we know what happened, how he gained us independence. But by doing great things, and we tap our extraordinariness and have a huge inflated ego, we should tell ourselves, I'm pretty ordinary. So balance.
Balance between the two is very, very important.
Very important.
The fine line between confidence and overconfidence. Yes. But ma'am, you spoke about Vipassana, just quickly to touch upon this, as between 2017 to 2021, before the pandemic, every member of the core council of I.I.M.U.N, and they're all between 15 to 22, anybody who reached the highest echelon in terms of leadership would have to go for a Vipassana camp.
Where is this?
The Vipassana camp.
No, who is?
The core council of the organization, that is the highest echelon of, the highest body that they can come to eventually. That if you were a part of that body, and even if you were 18, you have to go for the 10-day Vipassana.
Has anyone practiced it? This?
But they've gone there.
Who? Which company?
No, I'm saying from the organization.
Your organization?
Yes, ma'am. So that's what I'm saying, that Vipassana is something that I know many of us don't know about Vipassana, but I encourage you to look up what Vipassana is and to be able to see the benefits. Ma'am just mentioned the word, so it came to my mind, saying Vipassana is something that one must definitely look at.
No, as much as I benefited from Vipassana,
you would not say?
I would not say it's for everyone. Each one has to decide where they'll find their inner peace and inner answers. And anything which is forced is not a good thing. But I would say, look at one of the things called Vipassana, because it's been a most powerful way to become self-confident and reflective from within.
No, of course. And I think what I meant is, when you are an adolescent, there is very little time that one gets to self-reflect, because there's something that's happening all the time. And to that end, I will ask you the second last question, which is, in the context of young people, work-life balance, and this has become a conversation both in school in terms of, there's a lot that we want to do in life, and there's also academics, and also for college students and beyond, the concept of work-life balance. Ma'am, is there something in your dictionary that's called work-life balance? And how should they deal with this conundrum?
When I hear the word work-life balance, in my mind, I see at a height a rope, a tightrope walking. They stand on a rope at a height, and can you see how they have to balance themselves? If they are not careful, they'll fall very badly. So, this is not a positive image for me, work-life balance. It's very negative. What appeals to me is the concept of work-life integration, whereby you are not always on edge. and trying to balance. Every human being, whether he or she is a Gen Z or not, wants the world their way. I want the corporate world not to demand so many hours of work. I want to work from home. All this. Let's understand the world does not revolve around our expectation or what we want it to be. Reality is that the world doesn't revolve around each of us, and for every choice we make, there is a consequence. It is a fact that older generation was willing to give a disproportionate amount of time to their work at the cost of their family, their health, and other interests. And they found work very fulfilling. In our company, we define loyalty as being with the company for many years, and we have rewarded people who have stayed with us for over 25 years. Gen Z defined loyalty as not long service or putting long hours, but putting in their best in the time they are with the company. Gen Z want to be evaluated by the outputs and not by the hours of work. Am I representing the Gen Zs correctly? Yes. Instead of work-life balance, if we strive towards work-life integration, we will be able to create time for work when there is an emergency or necessity, and similarly, we will be able to focus on our personal needs when things are normal at work. I have 2 grandchildren. I have 2 grandchildren who are 25 and 28, and I have often discussed this with them. They strongly feel work is an important part of their lives, but cannot be all-consuming and should not completely engulf their personal life. I don't have an exact answer, but feel that each individual should decide but be willing to face the consequences. At Thermax, we value employees who put in smart and hard work, and that expectation is not likely to change in the short run.
And the last question from my end is, the series is called I.I.M.U.N's Role Model Series. Therefore, it would be unfair not to ask this very pertinent question. As much as you are a role model to very many in corporate India and elsewhere, was there a role model for you growing up, and how can one choose a role model?
Rishabh, I'm very uncomfortable with the concept of role model. You know, in my youth, I used to put people up on a pedestal. And when you put someone up, you have to strain your neck and look up. Then your neck gets tired. So you come down and you pull that person down with you. And you say, oh, I didn't know he was like this or she was like this. So I have learned to admire certain qualities in person I respect, for example, but don't call them role models, because I realize that no human being is perfect. And the usual expectation from a role model is that she will be perfect. The person from history whom I admire the most is Gandhiji. But I am well aware that he made several mistakes with his family. And in spite of that, I admire him for his strong belief in non-violence and fighting the mighty force of rule from the Europe or from the British. Nearer home, I respect my daughter and for her wisdom. She has taught me. She says, why do you think God has given us 2 years? If someone says harsh, rude, mean things, take it in from 1 year, throw it out of the other. This simple advice has helped me so much, because you don't become angry or agitated about what people say. Throw it out of the system. Another person I very much admire is Shaheen Mistry, who started Akanksha and Teach for India, who from a young age has worked relentlessly for providing better education to the underprivileged. I am not blind to the shortcomings of my daughter or Shaheen and do not demand that they be perfect.
Thank you for that. Our point with the series has also been very similar, that there is much to learn from everyone. And each and every person that you meet can teach you something. You've utilized 3 examples, 2 who were younger to you, and of course, Mahatma Gandhi. But that in itself shows the largesse and the magnanimity that I was talking about. The fact that you choose to learn from each and every person around you, something that I think all of us can imbibe.